What's up guys, Guidom here. Today we're going to be looking at how to merge ALS v4 with Action RPG templates. So I already have both of them here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to migrate Advanced Locomotion v4 main folder or the root folder and migrate it over to the RPG template there. Now once we do this, obviously we need to take care of certain things such as collision, custom collision channels, and inputs. So if we go to project settings here and then on the left side we have collision, as you can see, they have climbable custom channel and it's set to block by default. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this here and then go to the ARPG folder or project here. And of course, just add that collision to our collision settings here. So it should be in trace channels, new trace channel, go ahead and paste climbable, block by default, and do accept. So once we do this, we also have to take care of inputs, but we will probably take care of that as we work on the project later on because certain inputs are not really needed, depends on your use case, but we will replace certain inputs with what we have, what we already have on the Action RPG template, such as move forward, look right and up. We already have those, so it's just a matter of replacing them. So these are the inputs right here. And once we migrate ALS there and compile the main base class, it will show us some warnings about missing inputs, and that's how we know what we need to fix. So it's a good way of keeping track of what needs fixing. All right, so of course, gonna go ahead and right click on Advanced Locomotion v4 here and do migrate. And it's gonna ask me or tell me what will be migrated here. So all I need to do here is find the Action RPG folder, select the content folder, and simply click on select folder. It should pretty much just copy everything here over to the Action RPG. And as you can see, here's our folder right there. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch over to the third person mode here because I want to take care of third person mode first. Once we're happy with the results, then we can switch to top down mode and obviously change anything that needs changing. So here I'm going to go ahead and change that to third person, and this should be our regular third person. So we're going to go ahead and integrate ALS with this mode specifically. Then once we're happy, then we'll jump over to top down mode. Now, before we get started though, we need to take care of certain things. First of all, the main pickup class here. So just look for main pickup here and simply change the collision here such that it ignores the climbable collision. So if we just look collision here, make sure you're selecting the box there and you should see climbable. So by default it blocks. So we need to set it to ignore. So obviously climbable is used for vaulting. So we don't want the pickup class to interfere with that. So we'll need to set it there to ignore. This is by default has no collision, so it doesn't matter. And of course, the main pickup underscore SM. Make sure, of course, climbable is ignored. Same thing here. So no collision, so it doesn't matter. And this is no collision, so it also doesn't matter. I'm also going to go ahead and create a folder here. I'm going to name it Retarget because we're going to retarget some animations from the ARPG template in case you need them. And also we need them for testing here for the attacks. So the main way we will merge this is by using the reparenting method, which means that we will change the parent class of our player controller and character to be ALS or to the ALS class. So we're going to start with our player controller here. Just open it there. And if you click on class settings, you're going to see here parent class is set to player controller. So all we got to do here is instead of player controller, we're going to change it to ALS player controller. So now ALS player controller, as you can see there, it is the parent class of our player ARPG player controller. Once you do this, it's very important to take care of overriding the base implementations of your parent class. So for example, if you go to begin play, so as you can see, this is overriding the parent implementation, and leaving it this way will mean or will prevent the parent class from executing its begin play. So what we need to do here is right click there and do add call to parent function. So this is very important. So you need to do this for all the built-in functions such as begin play, event tick, event possess, and possess, etc. So here's for begin play, construction script, the same thing. So we do have the event possess there, so we need to do the same thing here. So that's pretty much all we need to do here for the player controller, and then we're gonna go to the character now and do the same thing. So go to the character, class settings, and parent class here. We need to change that to ALS character. But before we do though, I forgot one thing here in the player controller is whenever you reparent your class, you might want to reset some settings to match the parent class. And the way to do that is you click on class defaults, for example, and you go here in this icon here and do show only modified properties. This will show you what is different from the parent class. As you can see here, we only have these three items here. So we do want to show mouse by default, and this obviously depends on if you're third person or top down, but for the time being, we're gonna go ahead and leave it on by default, and we'll leave these as well. So in this case, we don't need to reset these values because we're happy with their current settings. But for the character, we will, of course, make sure that we do reset some values. But before I switch to a character, though, you need to make sure, just in case you might have it not apply properly, but you need to make sure that the camera manager here is set to ALS player camera manager. This is very important. So this would be an ARPG player controller. Now, go into the character, and we simply want to change the parent class here to the ALS character, which is we have base and Animan. In this case, we want the Animan. So Animan is already a child of the base here. So we simply want the Animan because it has some extra blueprint for us. So once you do this, you compile, make sure everything is good. And of course, we can do the same thing here. Class defaults, click here, show only modified properties. Now, as you can see, everything looks to be identical to the parent class. Now, if you have anything different here, make sure you reset it. And more specifically, we have the tag here. And so by default, tags is set to ALS underscore character. This is what lets the ALS system know that it should use the camera manager. Okay, so similarly here to the character movement, we'll do the same thing there. And here, in this case, we do have some different values. So we'll simply reset them like so. And of course, this as well. There you go. So now, if we just enable and disable again, as you can see now, we should match exactly the parent class there. That's pretty much all we need to do here in terms of resetting the default values. We will need to do it for the child classes as well here, just in case. But for the time being, we're going to go ahead and once again, make sure that the base implementations of the parent class are not overwritten completely. So we can just simply look for the gameplay here. So as you can see, we already have that added here. Construction script, already have that there. Event tick, I think we don't have that. So event tick, we don't. So right click, add parent, add the call to parent. And of course, make sure you also plug the inputs that it requires. Obviously, once you do this, now it's time to jump to changing the mesh here. So instead of the regular uniform mannequin, we're going to change it with the Animan here. So Animan, like so. And of course, for the AnimBP here, we're going to change it to ALS AnimBP. Go ahead and compile. It should work now as intended. Also, we should probably also reset some values here. So if we do the same trick here, show only modified properties, it pretty much only gives us the collision here. So in this case, essentially, we just need to make sure that we're ignoring the climbable channel. And similarly to the capsule here, in this case, because the mesh is different, we're just going to reset it to whatever ALS has it set to. And of course, for the collision here, make sure climbable is set to ignore. And once we do this, since ALS uses the camera manager, obviously here we have the third-person camera and third-person camera spring arm. So what we're going to do here is we're going to delete these two and then obviously fix any broken references. So the easiest way to do this is to simply right-click on TPP camera, do find references there, and this will let us know where this is used or being used in this blueprint. So just simply double-click there, and it's used here. So activate first person, third person. We don't really care about this function because we will let ALS handle that. So we can simply delete those nodes as well. Trace to center. Instead of getting the world location from the camera component, we're going to get it from the camera manager. So get player camera manager, and then from it we'll get the location. So get location. There you go. And then we'll simply replace this wire with this. You can hold control to drag a wire if you want, and that is already plugged in. So same thing here. This time we're going to get the rotation. So simply do get rotation and just simply plug that there. Double click here. And if we once again just do another one, find reference, as you can see now, no results found, which means that this is not used anywhere in the blueprint. We can safely remove it if we want. Here I see TPP spring, which is using the target arm length. Here you probably want to see what the camera manager is using as a distance, but for the time being I'm going to leave it at 300 by default and delete that. Right click on TPP spring, see if it's used anywhere. So it's not used. I can safely now select both of them and delete. And if I compile, it should be fine. So we're going to go ahead and give it a try. But before we do that, though, we need to make sure that since we do spawn with the child classes here, we need to make sure that these child classes also have the correct settings. So race 1, character race 1, gender 1. So all you got to do here is simply go to class defaults and simply do show only modify properties. Before we do this though, let's go ahead and play and see what happens. And as you can see, we're by default using the top-down camera because it's the only camera on the character, but we don't want to do that. So we need to make sure in all of our child classes that we do set the tag here to ALS character. You can simply click on this arrow right here and it should disappear, which means that it's essentially the same as the parent class. If you go to tag here, you can see that it's set to ALS character. And now since we do spawn with this, as you can see, here is our ALS camera working as intended. So AI controller class, you can just go ahead and set that to ALS, which is fine. So essentially you want to do the same thing here for all of the child classes. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing here for the character movement. Going to go ahead and reset all of these the way they're set according to the parent class. So do that. And once again, just to make sure. Okay, so this right here is set to false. Okay, so that should be set to true. So make sure that you reset all the values until you pretty much have nothing here, which means that it is pretty much the same values applied similar to the parent class, unless, of course, you want them to be different for the child classes. So like I said, you're going to have to do it for everything here, for all the child classes. So gender 2 as well. This one seems to be good to go. Okay, so then you want to go to race 2, open full blueprint editor, and of course reset all of these, tag, movement, and essentially just do the same thing we did, but you have to do it for all of them. So I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to do it to the character that we're testing with. So one thing here that's very important to the top down here, which is this one, use acceleration for paths. Make sure that this is set to true. There you go. All right, so since we're spawning with this child right here, so this is all we care about right now. So obviously if you go ahead and test, it looks pretty good so far. And obviously we have the weapons that are not attached to the character properly. So we'll take care of that next. So we need to go to Action RPG, find the mannequin, double click on the skeleton here. The first thing I'm going to do here is obviously for retargeting to work, you need to set the rig here to humanoid. Okay, if you don't see this, it should be in window here. So make sure that it is set to humanoid. This way you can retarget animations. And in the skeleton tree here, I'm going to select all the sockets right here. So hold control and select all of them. And we're going to paste them over to the Animan of ALS. So once you do that, you can Control C or right click copy and then find the Animan here. So Animan is this one, and the skeleton tab here, selection skeleton tree. You can just right click anywhere, it doesn't matter, and just do paste sockets here. Don't do paste socket to selected bone. You want the first one, paste socket. This will paste it according to its bone. So now if you go ahead and play, you're going to see that the shield and the axe are attached properly. Now obviously because it's a different mesh, you might have to adjust the sockets slightly. Now before we go and fix the inputs, we will take care of skills. So as you can see here, if I go over here and try to attack, so the skill has been executed, but now I'm frozen, I can't move. I mean, I can rotate, but I can't move. And that's because we played the wrong montage for the wrong skeleton tree or skeleton. So if you go to output log here and filter by messages and just go all the way down here, and if we just read this, warning, playing a montage, anim axe attack 1 for the wrong skeleton. So if you see your character frozen, can't move or anything like that, that means you're just playing a montage that is incompatible with the current skeleton mesh. So we're going to go ahead and take care of that next. I'm just going to go ahead and close all of these for the time being. I'm going to go ahead and, so we have this retarget folder there. So all I got to do here is just go to my animation here. I'm just going to go and filter and just simply filter by montages. So animation montages here. So we have these montages right there. So I can just select all of them. Actually, I don't have to select this one. So these are all for the UE4 mannequin from the Action RPG template. I'm going to right click there, duplicate anim asset and retarget. Select the ALS mannequin there, click change, select the retarget folder, click OK, and then retarget. So this should retarget the montages with their whatever animation they're using. So now we have all of the montages retargeted with their animations. Okay, so now all we have to do here is go to DT skills. So DT skills, and for example, for the basic attack here, you need to find where the montage is being played. So it should be an attack setup by type. Now this depends on the weapon ID. So we need to find the axe. Obviously, you need to do it for everything here. But for the time being, since we're testing with the axe, we'll simply do it for the axe. So let's find the axe where it is. Weapon ID. This is the axe. There we go. So for axe and axe 2, we're using two montages, which is axe attack 1 and axe attack 2. And as you can see here, the montages here are set for the default UE4 mannequin. So this is what we need to change. So in our retargeted montages, we have axe 1 and axe 2 already retargeted. As you can see, they work for ALS mannequin. So axe attack 1, I'm going to go and select it, then go to skills and just simply click on this arrow right here, and it should set it there. And as you can see, now we have attack 1, but the retargeted version that should work with the ALS mannequin. And then of course attack 2 here and do the same thing. So now we have these two montages here working for axe and axe 2. But that's not everything though, because we need to set the default groups here. As far as I know, the way you need to do it here for ALS is that you need to select these default groups. For example, you can start with spine. So obviously it depends on the type of animation. But essentially what you need to do here is, if we want to make it an upper body only attack, we're going to have to add all of the compatible layering groups. So spine, and then here I'm going to go ahead and do duplicate and not new slot. So make sure you do duplicate here, and then select, for example, arm L. And once again, duplicate slot, arm R. So essentially you're just selecting all of the layering groups that apply to that certain animation. Now this is where I could be wrong, but as far as I know, this is how it's done. So if you know of a better way, let me know. Here I should have duplicated there and then select the head. Okay, so spine, arm L, arm R, and head. Okay, now if I go ahead and play, we should be able to execute this attack. There you go. So we need to do the same thing for the second attack there. So here I'm gonna go ahead and do spine, duplicate, arm L, duplicate, arm R, and then finally the head. Now obviously this depends on the type of animations. If it's full body, you're probably gonna have to do maybe legs and pelvis, if I have to guess. So now we should have both attacks working as intended. So the one and the second attack should both of them working. As you can see, they do apply damage as expected. So next we're going to fix the inputs of our base ALS class here. So RPG character, I can just access it from here. And then this is ALS base character. So if we go ahead and open it, and as you can see, we have a bunch of warnings here, mainly complaining about the inputs. As you can see, it says event reference, unknown, action, ragdoll action, camera, etc. So in here, we're going to replace some of these inputs with what we already have in our Action RPG template, and we're going to add any missing inputs. All right, so we have move forward here. So right here, we're going to go ahead and change that with git move forward, which is pretty much the same thing here. So we're just replacing here. So this is move right. We have a move right. Once again, if you're unsure where these come from, these are simply the inputs in our project settings. So move right, look up, turn, move forward, and these are action mappings. So we're simply replacing the missing references here. And of course, same thing here. So move right or left, and that would be move forward. So move forward here. These are the axes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to replace these with what we have in the Action RPG. So this is simply calling this. So go back here and movements, and we already have it here, but in this case, in the Action RPG, we have this can move, which you can only move if you're not stunned or you have like some sort of negative effect that prevents you from moving. So this check is necessary. So what we're going to do here is simply call the same event from here. So here I'm simply going to call the player movement input. So player movement input. So this one right here, and this is move forward, as you can see there, and this would be just set it to false. And you can delete these if you want. Okay, so now if I go and play, as you can see, I still can move just fine. But if you're stunned or something like that, then you wouldn't be able to. This right here, simply look up and down, which is already handled here, like so. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. The jump action here, I'm gonna go ahead and add an event here. So event or custom event, so execute jump. And this is also used for mantling or vaulting. I'm gonna go ahead and add an input there and do like jump question mark and simply replace it here. So release would be false and press would be here, and delete that. Okay, so now we simply have to call this event from our Action RPG character. So right there, if I can jump, then do execute jump. There you go. So we can do like true here, and on release we can do false. Now for vaulting though, we need to make sure that that's working. So advanced locomotion folder, environment, simple object builder. Okay, so right now if I go here, let's test it, and it seems to be working just fine. But we need to make sure that the proper collision is handled here. So if we go to mantle check, you can see here that it's by default set to top-down mouse for some reason, but it should be set to climbable here. There you go. So I think that's all we have here. So make sure it's using the climbable channel there. So for the aim action here, we can actually add it to the project settings. This is also one way of fixing these warnings. You can simply add the inputs manually. So you can go to inputs here, action mapping, and we should simply add, let's see what's the name here, aim action. So aim action, and simply do a right mouse button here. There you go. And then we can simply, if you compile, you'll see the warning, it goes away. So there's one thing though that you need to keep in mind is that if the same input is used on a higher class, such as the player controller, then it will be consumed, meaning that it will prevent this class from using that input. So if I just add the breakpoint there, play, right click, nothing happens. And that's because if we go to the player controller here, and then look for the right click mouse here, like so, here we go. So this is used here. As you can see, this is using the right mouse button, but here it says consume input. So if we go ahead and disable that, and now we can right click, and as you can see, we're able to aim with ALS, as you can see there. So if an input is not working, make sure it's not being consumed. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and take care of sprinting and walking. So in terms of movement in the Action RPG template, we have a few modifiers that can affect your movement speed, such as buffs and debuffs, and we need to take that into consideration here. So in ALS here, they have a function that executes every tick called dynamic movement or something like that, and this is setting the walk speed directly. And so we need to take care of this condition right here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a function. So I'm going to call it get speed multiplier. You can name it whatever you want, but this essentially will simply return the speed based on whatever buffs and debuffs we have currently. And this function I will override on our base character. So select the function, make it pure, and make it return a float. And I'm going to call that speed. So this right here actually will take a input as well, which is of type float. Just call it current, and this will be used to calculate the speed based on buffs and debuffs. So we'll go here. So all we have to do here is simply use that function here, like so. And the same function should be used here as well. So walk speed, there you go. There you go, and sprint speed here. So you might have noticed that this function is empty currently, and that's because we intend to override it in our child character here, which is the ARPG character. So all we gotta do here is just add new override function and look for the function by name. And the name was get speed multiplier. So override function, get speed multiplier should be anywhere here. There you go. So get speed multiplier, and now we can simply override it and add our own implementation. So we already have a debuff variable here that is replicated, and all you got to do here is simply do multiply by this, and this is the way you handle it. So speed plus speed multiplied by the buffs and debuffs. So now this should be useful in our base character there. Now we need to handle walking and sprinting now because we don't have those here. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a custom event here in the ARPG character here, and I'm gonna call it server sprint. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add an input there, and then go to sprint. So this is used to start and stop sprinting there. And copy Control-C, Control-V, server walk. And here, I'm gonna go ahead and do walk. So select this event right here and do run on server, reliable, and this as well. So run on server, both of these run on server. And we're gonna go ahead and call these when we press the sprint key, which you can add manually if you want, but for the time being, I'm just gonna go ahead and add it like this. So left shift for sprinting and left control for walking. And we're gonna test with the like an area, a debuff area where our movement speed is slowed down to ensure that it works properly. So here you simply want to do server sprint to true, and then copy paste there and set it to false. And then very important thing here, you want to set the desired gate, set desired gate there to sprinting, and this is obviously part of ALS, and here you want to set it to running. Here same thing, I'm gonna go ahead and call server walk. In this case, we're gonna go ahead and do set it to true there, copy this, and then set it to walking, and of course do the same thing here, except this is false and this is running. And here it's very simple, you just copy this, and then based on this value we'll select a certain value. So if you want to sprint true, that's going to be sprinting. If not, you're going to be running. Same thing here. If you're walking, you're going to be walking, obviously, so walking, and if not, you're going to be running. Okay, so let's go ahead and give it a try. So obviously I'm sprinting now, and I let go, I'm walking or running, and then I'm walking here, which is working just fine. All right, so obviously we need to make sure that this works with a debuff zone. There you go, so let's go ahead and give it a try. Okay, as you can see, I'm being slowed down. I'm not pressing anything, just to move forward. And now if I go there or leave the area, I should be fine. But if I press the sprint, as you can see, I'm actually going slightly faster, but I'm still affected by the zone itself. And then if I leave, now it starts sprinting just fine. Now, I think that's pretty much it for third person. I think we're pretty much good here. I will probably have to do a second part here, depending on what kind of problems you find. So let me know if you find any issues or something that I missed. But for the time being, I think we're Gucci here. We're going to go ahead and jump to top-down mode. So top-down mode here, simply change this to top-down here. So for top-down mode here, there is one thing to keep in mind here is that do you want to use the camera manager, or do you just want to use a top-down spring arm and top-down camera? And I think you should be fine with these, but if you want to use the camera manager, you have to go in their settings and change the orientation and location as well. For this tutorial, I'm just going to go ahead and use these. I think they work just fine. So what you're going to do here is you want to go to the ARPG character and then to tags, and you simply want to delete the ALS character there. So just clear that. So this pretty much just tells the ALS to not use the camera manager. And you want to do the same thing here for childs. So character, raise, child 1, class defaults, and then tag. That seems to be empty by default, so that's good. So make sure it's empty. And now if you go ahead and play, as you can see, it's working just fine. Let's go ahead and test the debuff zone here. Okay, so it seems to be working just fine as well. Okay. So one final thing when it comes to top-down mode here is that when you're playing as a client, this is what gets spawned for smooth movement. And obviously you can control this from here. Go to the player controller here. You have use client-side movement simulation. And this simply spawns this character right here, the local character. And that's what simulate movement in your client for smooth movement, obviously. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing here. So class settings here. And as you can see, it inherits from a character. We need to make sure that it inherits from ALS Animan, like so. And of course, once again, if you have any begin play, so you have begin play or event tick or whatever, base class like that, you need to make sure that you call the parent class like so. So once again, you want to go, for example, to character movement, show only modify properties, and of course, make sure that everything is reset according to the parent class. So obviously, you want to also make sure that you're not using the tags, the ALS tag here. So look for tag, and as you can see, you have ALS character. Go ahead and remove that. For our local character, we also need to handle the speed multiplier. So we'll do the same thing here. Override function, get speed multiplier, which should be here. There you go. So we have a set speed here, or set move speed, a function here that gets called here. So instead of doing this, we're simply going to go ahead and save this debuff like so. So just call it debuff. So by default, we need to make sure that it's set to 0. And then here, simply do the same thing here. So if we go back to our character here, on ref or speed. So we're simply going to go ahead and copy this and paste it over our local character. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and plug that there. This is our current speed, and just simply need the debuff there, like so. There you go. So now we should be able to pretty much have the same thing there working. So we're going to play. And as you can see, our local character here, I'm playing as a client, and our player is working just fine. If I go over this, as you can see, I'm being affected by the speed as well. Also, when playing as a client, you might get some errors, and this is because of ALS v4. The normal version is currently not replicated, so you will have to get one of the community versions that are replicated, and of course the same process applies generally speaking. But to get rid of these errors, you can simply go here and simply disconnect this function. And also an ALS player controller, you need to disconnect this right here for the ALS HUD. So if you play right now, you should have pretty much no errors. V4 kind of works well. Even the non-replicated can work with the top-down mode just fine, but in third person, you might have issues with the camera manager. So one final thing here, for top-down mode, you might want to change the velocity mode here. So if we change it to, if you just look for mode, it's set to desired rotation mode, that you can change it to velocity there. And same thing for the local character. So mode and then velocity there, and that should work, I think, better for top-down mode, as you can see there. There you go. So that's gonna do it for this video. So if you have any questions or encounter any issues, let me know in the comments below, and I will do a follow-up video or answer your questions if it's simple enough. So until then, thank you for watching, stay safe, and catch you in the next one.